Hey everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today's video is going to be the first part of my December wrap-up because I actually read books this month and I'm still reading them, unlike the month of November. And I am optimistic that there's going to be so much to talk about that I'm going to need to hack it up into 2 videos. So I thought I would get a jump on things and talk about a bunch of books that I've read in December and let you know what I think of them. So as you can tell, I'm already losing my mind. It's going to be a good one. So here we go. So what I found this month to be is a little bit kind of taken out of my hands, in that I had a couple books on like waitlist at the library and they came through, which I wasn't expecting, which kind of changed some of my reading plans. I had an arc that I needed to read, which I kind of forgot somehow in my head. I was convinced that it was January that it was coming out, but it was December, so I wound up pushing that forward. So whatever, whole bunch of stuff. But I started off the month listening to Becoming by Michelle Obama and Forgetting the Glare. I had bought this book for my mom for Christmas last year and she read it pretty quickly and then turned it over to me to read, which I didn't do, partially because, you know, moody me. And I also heard so many great things about the audiobook since Michelle Obama herself narrates it, and I really wanted to listen to that. So it came through. Not even kidding, I've probably been on the wait list for like 6 months for that book, but it literally came through like the first week of the month. So I power listened to it. It was like everything and then some. I followed along a bit with the book. There are some pictures in the book, though they're few and far between. It's not like you have to have the book to follow along. I'm hitting the tree. I'm so not used to having a giant prop next to me, but this was such a good book. And I say that like I'm surprised, and I'm not. I've heard incredible things about it. And there's so many things I enjoyed about the book itself, sort of audio aside, but highly recommend the audiobook. And this really is her journey. It is, you know, everything from her family when she was born, growing up in Chicago, her journey to college, to law school, working at the law firm, obviously meeting Barack, becoming a mom, their marriage, the White House, all of that kind of stuff. But there's so much about her when she's younger. And to me, it's such an empowering story, empowering, geez, story, I think for anyone. And she just really took hold of her life from a super early age and was just committed and ambitious and dedicated and went for it. And I just think she's an amazing storyteller and an amazing woman. And I really enjoyed so much of this. She is exactly who she is in every interview you see with her. She is candid, she is frank, she is honest, she's very true to herself. She tells all of the stories, good, bad, otherwise. She talks about her struggles in life, in her marriage, as a mom, as a sister, as a child, just all of it. And I just thought it was great. There's so many great nuggets in here. I don't think it's super political. It definitely, there obviously are political moments to it, because how can there not be? But there was so much about her life, especially before they were very much thrust into the spotlight when he ran for president, and kind of became sort of before that when he was the buzzed about senator. I remember during the DNC in 2004, kind of all around that time. I really enjoyed learning a lot about them. I enjoyed her behind the scenes of the White House, and I'm not someone who follows a lot of political families or reads books about the White House or politics or anything, but I enjoyed what felt like a very normal family with young children moving into this extraordinary life. And she is very honest about kind of fumbling along the way, if you will, with the challenges that were presented to her, with a lot of the criticism she faced about how she was presenting herself when she was giving speeches at the beginning, kind of how she came off and a lot of the coaching that she went through, and how she really tried to make the White House an accessible place for everyone. And I just thought it was great. So I think this is a great story for anyone politics aside, who just wants to read a really inspiring story by a really incredible woman. Can't recommend the audiobook enough. I think the physical read would also be good. I'm definitely going to go back. I marked some pages kind of along the way and wrote down some quotes, but I even shed a tear. I will tell you, December so far has been a month of crying, but loved it. Totally loved it. Glad I finally got the audiobook, and I can finally return this to my mom. The second book that I read is one that I talked about in one of my vlogs, if you were watching those for NaNoWriMo, and also because it was rough. I made a whole video about books on my bookshelf that I've had for a long time that I would like to get to, but I just haven't. And I'm kind of like making this rule of, I think I'm gonna give myself to like the middle of next year to either like read them or unhaul them. But it's just sort of like this, I don't even know if it was like 9 or 10 books. I was trying to clear off my bookshelf to make room for some new stuff that I bought. And I picked up the book, London is the Best City in America by Laura Dave, and was inspired to do this video about all these books that I've had on my shelf for eons that I haven't read. And then I filmed the entire video, but I didn't include this book in it because I'm a boob. So here it is. I read it, and this is the book that I picked up easily a decade ago. Yeah, easily a decade ago. Sorry, it's rough. And I loved it. It's a super short book. This is definitely, I want to say it was like 2006 it came out. This is very reminiscent of the time. I would say 2006, yes. With contemporary, I hesitate to call it chick lit because it's not, but I think it probably would have been bucketed a little bit that way at the time. And it is probably 100% why I picked it up. And it is about a woman who, a woman named Emmy, who basically is a little bit lost in life. And she broke up with her fiance a year ago, and now she has to come home for her brother's wedding. And she's not super jazzed about it. She's not really in the best place in her life. She's kind of not totally over the breakup, even though she's the one who did it, and is not really looking forward to facing all the questions and sort of being in this romantic wedding weekend extravaganza for her brother and his longtime girlfriend. But of course she does it, and she comes home, and her brother basically, like the first night that they're hanging out together watching fireworks, is kind of like, I think I'm making a huge mistake. What do I do? And it's the weekend wedding. The wedding's that weekend. So they basically have like 3 days to sort out his stuff, which in the process helps her sort out her stuff. And it's this great journey. I love the brother-sister relationship. I love Emmy as a character. They don't always do great things. They don't always make great choices. They don't always say all the right things. There's a great cast of characters in this, and I just devoured it and I loved it. And I will say a huge part, I think, of what made me love it is this book is actually set not too far from where I grew up. So it is a town that I know very well. I loved all of the references. The author is from there. It's Scarsdale, New York is where it's set. And she's from there, and she references things. And I just loved it because I could literally picture it in my head because I know this town. And I thought it was great. And that might be part of why I loved it, but also the story itself. And I think I need to do another one of those trope videos, but there's something about someone who just is feeling kind of lost in life that I just love. I love reading these stories, and I read another one this month. But I just thought it was great. So I'm excited to pick up more Laura Dave. She has written more books. Highly recommend it, and I'm happy to say this one is going to permanently live on my shelf. I dog-eared it like crazy. I'm so happy I picked it up. So I'm optimistic for the rest of the books on that list, and I will link that video below if you didn't see it, but this was a total hit for me. Another book that I listened to is Can I Say by Travis Barker, and this is the autobiography. He is most notably known, I would say, as the drummer of Blink-182, but that is not even a fraction of what he has done musically, though by far what he is most famous for. And I actually started this book in November for Nonfiction November, and between NaNo and other stuff coming up, I didn't finish it until December. But this book surprised me in a lot of ways in that I was expecting kind of like sex and drugs and rock and roll type of a biography, and there was all of that. there's a lot of that. A lot of drums, 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 which is like the subtitle of the book. But I learned so much about him, and I did not know much at all about him other than he was a drummer for Blink-182. I did obsessively watch the very short-lived reality show Meet the Barkers about him and his then wife Shayna Moakler and their kids. And he was in that horrific plane crash with DJ AM and 4 other people, and him and DJ AM are the only people who had survived it. And I mean, he basically was burned almost his entire body, like inconceivable that the 2 of them even survived this plane crash. So it was a really emotional story on so many different fronts. I will say he was completely honest. I don't know that there was much holding back. He didn't narrate the audiobook, which was unfortunate, I think, because I didn't totally connect with the narrator of the book, but his story was fascinating to me. It starts all the way at the beginning when he's a kid, his parents, his sisters, all of it. He like started drumming when he was 4 years old. And it was really interesting to hear about his upbringing. His mom passed away when he was pretty young, and it completely influenced his life. And I found that very interesting. And I cried listening to this book also, because there was a lot of really heavy emotional family pieces in this, both him as a child, as a son, as a sibling, and then later in life as a father. And I wasn't expecting so much family in this book. I really expected it to be more about his drumming life. So that was very interesting to me. And he really, I would say, was almost, I don't even want to say like quietly ambitious, but so ambitious from an early age, and was in bands when he was a teenager and playing with all of these bands, and in very hot demand, and kind of very quickly made a name for himself as a very well-respected drummer in the industry. And he kind of moved down to Southern California. He was in Laguna Beach for a while. He talks about kind of some of the earlier years crossing paths with like unknowns like Gwen Stefani and No Doubt, and you know, people who were just up and coming at the time. So there's definitely some name drop in this. He talks very openly about his drug use and drug abuse. He talks very openly about all of his sexual exploits, something I didn't love, although he does admit in the book that he really was very disrespectful to women and didn't treat them well, and that comes through in the book. So he is authentic to how he thought and acted at the time, even though now in hindsight he realized just sort of what a disrespectful human he was when it came to women. I didn't love all of the sex part of it, but there you go. Sometimes it was a little bit TMI. But I really enjoyed as a whole, I would say, the story. Blink plays a decent part in it, but it's certainly not as big as I expected. There was definitely some tea about some drama with the band and with Tom DeLonge, who obviously isn't with them anymore, and they sort of all broke up and got back together again, and I didn't realize sort of how big the rift was. And I was reading something online afterwards where obviously with the audiobook for some reason they don't like always read the acknowledgements, which I don't know why they don't read the whole book. But I had read online that Travis didn't thank Tom in the acknowledgements, but he like thanks Mark Hoppus and sort of all these other people that he worked with musically. And his response was sort of like, oh, you know, like sometimes you just forget, like writing a book is such a big deal. I don't think he forgot to thank Tom. So I was surprised to hear some of kind of the drama between them. He was somewhat explicit about his tumultuous relationship with Shayna Moakler. She doesn't always look the best in it, but at the same time, she's interviewed in it. So I will say one of the things I struggled with the audiobook. So there's a lot of other people you hear from, family, friends, sister, managers, bandmates, ex-wives. There's a couple which I didn't realize, friends, doctors, like all of it. You hear like all these different perspectives. And in the book, like when it switches perspectives, like it'll say like Shayna Moakler, you know, Travis Barker's ex-wife, or Mark Hoppus, lead singer of Blink-182. And then you start to hear that person, but it never says like Travis Barker is talking again. So since there's only one narrator on it, sometimes somebody would be speaking and then it will have shifted back to Travis's point of view, but it wasn't clear in the book. So I would be like, wait, what is she talking about? Or like, what is he saying? So I found that to be a little bit confusing. I wish there was a little bit clearer delineation on that, or there were multiple narrators, which I know wasn't always possible. And there is a little bit of time jump, and there's a ton of characters in this. So it was hard to keep everybody straight because he has been involved with so many bands and so many different people in his life. There was a lot to kind of hang on to, and I don't know, it was like a 400 or something page book, so it wasn't short by any stretch. But interesting, super impressive to me that he is back, recovered. He is clean and sober now. He is drumming again. Blink is back together, sans Tom. He's doing so much musically. It just was really interesting, but really a hardcore focus on how fatherhood changed him. Sorry about that. And sort of the impact his mom had on him, and the obvious impact that plane crash had on him. So interesting if you're curious at all about rock and roll biographies or Travis or any of it. I would give it a listen. So that happened. The next book I picked up is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. And well, I know the Alice in Wonderland story. I've never actually read the book. And I wound up doing sort of a combo audiobook read look. There's a lot of illustrations in this. This tree is going to be the death of me. So I did kind of follow along with looking at some of the illustrations. This book is chock full of incredible quotes, very famous quotes, as we all know. So I was dog-earing some of the pages. And I will say a big reason why I wanted to read this book is because since last year, I feel like really early on my channel when I did a book haul, I bought this. I bought Alice by Christina Henry. And this is a retelling, I almost just knocked something off the tree, of Alice. And I have this, and I have the Red Queen. And I haven't read either of them, obviously. And I would like to. And I wanted to sort of go into it with like full Alice in my head, full original story, so I could pick up on any breadcrumbs or anything that is in here and also get it, I guess I would say. So I don't know how true this is to it or sort of what direction this takes. But it says a mind-bending new novel inspired by the twisted and wondrous works of Lewis Carroll. So I will be reading this in 2020. Stay tuned. That is my game plan, at least. But I enjoyed this. I know the story, like I said, loosely. I am not someone who is infatuated with it. I was doing my Goodreads review and then I was reading some other people's, and there are people who are like hardcore Alice in Wonderland, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass, all that good stuff. I enjoyed it. Like I said, there are some great quotes in it. It certainly is hugely impactful in the fact that I think it has like never been out of print. There have been so many movies, TV shows, remakes, references, all sorts of stuff that runs the gamut. I have huge respect for the illustrations, for sort of the insane creativity of it all. And I remember watching like a 2020 documentary like years and years and years ago where it was talking about Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which impacts some people, predominantly apparently people who have migraines, which I am one of them. And as a kid, I used to have this thing where like my vision would shift and things would appear further away than they really were, and things would speed up in sound even though people were talking at a normal pace. It was quicker in my head, and it was like completely inexplainable when it would happen, why it would happen. And all these years later, I remember watching this documentary, and it was talking about the phenomenon known as Alice in Wonderland syndrome that affects migraine sufferers. And I wasn't diagnosed with migraines until I guess it was like 15 years ago now, which is insane, but not as a child. So anyway, that's my connection to Alice in Wonderland, which has nothing to do with anything other than I'm a rambler. So there you go. But I read this. The last book I want to talk about is The Dead Girls Club by Damien Angelica Walters. And I got this as an ARC from NetGalley. Thank you, NetGalley. And this is the one where in my head I thought it was coming out in January. It came out in December already. So I read it. And this is mystery kind of supernaturally witchy kind of vibes going on. It is dual timelines, 1991, which signed me up, which I was so excited about when these girls are like 13 years old, and then present day. And basically, this is about 4 girls who were best friends when they were 12 or 13 years old, and doing what 12 and 13-year-old girls kind of do, from seances to scary stories to the clickiness that happens in a group of teenagers. And back in the day, one of the girls is super into the ghost stories and is telling the story about the Red Lady. I'm checking that that's what it is, the Red Lady. And her ghost and sort of all these awful things. And that friend winds up dying mysteriously. And we fast forward to present day, and our main character, Heather, who has, you know, gone on and got married and not friends with those girls anymore. They all sort of stopped being friends around that time that Becca was murdered, is now just sort of living her life and suddenly being haunted, so to speak, by what happened back then, in that she gets this mysterious note in the mail, kind of in the first page of the book, referencing what happened back that summer when Becca died. So Heather is in a turmoil, and she's trying to figure out who's sending her these letters, and we start to go back and forth in time to sort of everything that builds up to Becca dying and what happens that summer, and then in the present day, Heather dealing with these sort of mysterious threats that she's getting, and how she copes with them. So in theory, all of this are things that I love. It's 90s, it's dual timelines, it's trying to figure out what happened. We've got the dead body, we've got the mysterious group, we've got some weird notes coming, we've got secrets, we've got all this good stuff mixed in. And unfortunately, this book just didn't do it for me. And I feel like there were a bunch of different reasons. One of them is I did not find the Red Lady ghost story to be particularly scary. And I don't know if it's because coming off reading Rules of Vanishing in October, which was a hardcore, spooky AF, couldn't read it before bed, Lucy, The Woods, all of it. That book freaked me out. My bar got pretty high. I didn't find any of the Red Lady stuff particularly freaky. I also didn't love, and I feel like this is even like in the synopsis tells you something that I think we all would have been better off not knowing, even for a bit in the book. And you find it out pretty early in the book, but I'm not gonna say it. You can read the synopsis if you wanna find out. But I feel like there would have been better tension if we didn't have kind of all the information up front. So I didn't love that about it. And I don't know if it was supposed to build a different kind of tension, but it really didn't build a ton of tension for me. And then kind of like, I didn't connect with any of the characters. Like, what I did like about the book is I felt that the teenage storyline was authentic, in that girls can be mean, girls can be cliquey, girls can be bossy, they can turn 3 to 1, they can alienate someone, they can make you feel insecure, they can make you doubt yourself. Sort of the alpha girl can really mess with the rest of the group. It is a lot about kind of wanting to fit in and following the leader and doing things you don't want to do, but doing it because you don't want to be ostracized and you don't want to kind of be kicked out of the group. And you don't want to not be the best friend, and sort of everyone vying for alpha girl's attention. All of that felt extremely authentic to me. I think it is very true to the teenage experience, and speaking from experience, girls can be horrible at that age. I was not always my best self at that age or in my teens. So I thought that that part was really interesting. Even though I didn't find the ghost story to be completely compelling, I did find the dynamic between the girls to be good. And then in the present day, I just didn't feel like the amped up tension. And Heather's married. There's sort of a hint that her and her husband maybe are like a little bit off, but not like anything dramatic. But then things sort of evolve over the course of the story, and I really feel like he was just sort of like a wimp, and maybe that was like the whole point, but like he sort of accepted too much stuff. It's like, okay. And there was some tree. It's gonna be a rough month of filming with the tree up if I sit here. Like there were parts that were supposed to be like tension filled between them, and it didn't feel tense. Like it just felt kind of cliche to me, I guess I would say. And I just like when the reveal happened, I wasn't like wowed by any of it. I don't know. There was a little bit of convenience factor to it. You have to suspend disbelief every once in a while, but I just couldn't suspend enough to make this book work for me. So I finished it. I wanted to see what was going to happen. I was curious how it was all going to wrap up, but unfortunately, just missed the mark for me. So that's going to do it for part 1 of what I read in December. I am happy to say there is another great read to talk about. There is another so-so read to talk about. There's another nonfiction to talk about. So all these cliffhangers I'm going to leave you guys with. But I am so excited to be reading again. I have not been writing too much this month, but I'm giving myself a little bit of a break. And what I will tell you is that I have definitely figured out a couple storyline things. Let's get vague. That I'm with my book. So it's funny, somebody had asked in one of the comments if I changed my killer again. I haven't. I think I am sticking with my murderer as is, but I did make a change to one thing, which is a pretty significant change in some ways, and I finally, I think, settled on 2 very critical character names that I was muddling with, although I'm still calling my evil person the name of that girl that I don't like. So I haven't figured her out yet, because every name I come up with, I either like it and then want to use it for a character that I'm gonna like, or it's like so obviously bad that I just can't do it. Or it's the name of somebody else from my past that I don't care about. So anyway, all that to say, I'm finding that by reading other books and sort of like letting my mind wander, I am actually sort of subconsciously working out some problems and hitches without sitting down and trying to like type my way through them, which is all good. So I'm giving myself December to just enjoy and mood read. I am a couple books shy of 100 by the end of the year, and I'm making it my mission to get there, which I think I can do. And because I'm a total nerd, I'm trying to figure out which book I want to read to be number 100, but then I feel like that puts too much pressure on 100. So I will let you guys know when I finish up this wrap up, what I ended with and where I'm at with all of that stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching. This is probably going to go up, it might even be like Christmas Day. So happy holidays to everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying a little bit of time off, a little bit of a break, having fun doing whatever it is that you're doing. And thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.